Hello, hi, and welcome to Skipping the Small Talk with Empower Autism, a podcast where we discuss everyday experiences, autism, family advice, and more. My name is Riley, and today I am joined by Miah and Kaiya. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
This is Miah. This is my older sister. We are awesome and Indigenous Australian. Take it away, Miah.
Okay, wow. That's Kaiya.
Hello.
Kaiya is also Indigenous Australian because we're related.
That tends to be how that goes.
Oh my god, how did you know?
Oh my god. So we're talking today primarily because of something that you brought up when I mentioned, hey, I'm starting a podcast with my work. You said, do you have any people on there who are not white?
Yeah.
I said, no. And you said it would be really cool to talk about the experiences of Aboriginal people with autism. And I told my manager, she said, do you want to talk about it? So,
and I love talking.
Yeah.
I love talking about myself.
You do a great talking, and I've heard you talk before, and you've done really well. So we're going to talk today.
Yay!
Oh yeah, do you want to decide my pronouns for the day?
Yes, my pronouns for the day are they, she for today.
And the rest of the time, they're any of them.
Yay!
Kaiya's pronouns for today are, wow, look at that little guy go.
That's my pronouns for today. Thank you so much.
What would you like your pronouns for today, actually?
My pronouns for the day, I'm thinking she, they for today.
Okay, so we're both just
She, they. We're both she,
Okay.
they for today.
I'm also fine with he. And also, I will just quickly say my diagnosis.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes. I have been diagnosed with ASD level 2 and ADHD, an attentive type. So that's just so I'm not. People know what experiences I'm talking from. I cannot speak for any other type of disability.
You are here to represent primarily, first of all, yourself
Yes.
and your own experiences. If people can relate to those experiences, that is wonderful.
Baller as hell.
Lovely. My pronouns as well, because I don't know if I've said them before, here.
Yay!
Oh my god, look at you, white boy, go.
Happy pronouns!
So, you brought up this topic.
Yes.
Right? What inspired you to read this up?
My dad. Well, no, also me. Just because it's, I think statistically been shown that people who are not men, but also people who are not white, tend to have to learn to mask way earlier in life, usually as a form of one social conditioning and like survival. That it's so it's a lot harder for them to get diagnosis because the diagnostics and the way that they've been developed are to measure the behaviors of like usually cishet white dudes. No offense, they are allowed to exist. But because of that, it's a lot harder for people in most other margins or cultures and regions. Like, it's so much harder for them to get a diagnosis because the behaviors and measures are just like, it doesn't account for them.
Yeah.
They are not accounted for in a lot of these discussions.
A lot of the studies about autistic people and the way we've designed the diagnosis is based on white men. Through the lens of also white men, and so that sometimes leads to complications.
Yeah.
Because not everyone is a white man, and your lived experience influences how you move through the world. And how your autistic traits are presented. This is Rosie.
Yes, Rosie has lots of thoughts on this
We're
subject.
filming at my house today.
Do you have any thoughts?
It's Rosaline.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, Indigenous people.
Yes.
I think, and this is just an experience I had, that was not the same white peers of mine had. At least when I've heard talk about it from like other people and like their experiences they and their siblings have had in school. Or I did really bad until like grade 5. And a lot of my failings as a student, even though they were like, to me, pretty clear signs of having autism, were usually just seen and being treated as me being dumb or stupid somehow. Yeah. And that's apparently an experience I've heard about in like, just in like my Indigenous family that they've also experienced.
Yeah.
That when I've heard about it from other people who had difficulties in the same grades I did, but they were like a white dude, they immediately got like diagnosis for it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't until so much later in life because it didn't account for me.
Yeah.
And some of that's being a woman as well, like being femme presenting at least.
Yeah, everything plays into
Yeah.
Gender queer.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think mine has to do with how essentially for most of my early life, I was essentially nonverbal. I did not speak. That's not your fault.
Okay.
That's just we kind of had a sort of relationship, me and Miah, where Miah would speak and I would she would often speak for me.
Yeah. Very twins. Irish twins.
Raised mostly as twins. I was essentially nonverbal in my earlier years of life. Extreme difficulty with reading social cues. Younger.
Well, I did too, but I was also just really loud.
Yeah.
So I wasn't seen as like quiet and awkward, so that meant I was like not autistic, I guess.
Yeah.
But I was also very smarty pants. I thought I was right all the time.
Yeah.
And I was very stubborn, so people called me Sheldon. Yeah. And no one thought I was autistic. Isn't that crazy?
And people saw these traits and called you Sheldon and didn't look into this.
No, they were like, hey, maybe
getting you a diagnosis.
Maybe this child has autism. No, they were like, oh, you're just like Sheldon. We're not looking further into that.
No. Did you look into it as a child? Or
nope. I had no idea, because I think a thing... I was very bad at navigating my emotions. I think I probably have and I've heard it's pretty common with people with ADHD, and I don't have any official diagnosis for this is just my inkling, is alexithymia or emotional blindness. I have a much harder time passing through the actual emotions and just physical sensations I am feeling most of the time, and I have an even harder time verbalizing those emotions. So even though I'm talkative and I am emotional and I don't hide those emotions, like I show them very overtly, I'm very bad at actually processing them, and because I didn't know what that was, all those behaviors, to me that meant I was just like not autistic, or I was just like a different kind of whatever I was. So that's how we're going at the moment.
Bringing it back to intersectionality and Aboriginal identity, do you think having your Aboriginal family members get diagnosed and be more open about being autistic has been helpful as opposed to white friends and stuff like that?
Like me?
Yes, like you.
Yeah, do you think your experience is different to the other people in your life?
Yeah, I think it does, because with my masking, because I think masking is a huge force that maybe stops me from being so outwardly neurodivergent as much as I want to be. I think a lot has to do with the whole intersectionality aspect, where I'm a woman, I'm Aboriginal. If I were to act the same way, like a white kid in my class who was also autistic, I would be labelled as violent or weird or stupid.
Like if a boy did what I did in classes, they'd be like the funny class clown. When I did it, people would be like, why are you being weird?
So I think seeing it reflected in other Aboriginal people was a big bonus to me, to be like, oh yeah, this is something I can do too.
I also think I won't say masking is always a negative. No, it is for some people literal survival. Yeah, especially for Black and Brown people and Indigenous people. It is something you learn how to do from birth because you have to.
Yes,
I'm a whitey. Should I say that in a more formal way? Okay,
I know what you mean.
White passing.
I am white passing.
Yes.
I do not have the experience and lived experience of having to interact with that stuff as someone who is brown or black, as a black fella, right? Yes. So the way I have to interact with it is in itself a lot safer. Yes. Well, if you are brown or black, having those overtly neurodivergent traits in public especially, you have to learn how to mask because it's just safety. If anything can be used against you in that sense, and there's a lot of time they will take any reason to question you or see the worst in you. Yeah. So you kind of have to model minority yourself.
Yes, you do.
I've heard people describe it as obviously there's intersectionality, and people can face oppression or be discriminated on a bunch of different levels. but in our society, we sort of have a hierarchy of how we view people first.
Yes.
And race tends to be the first thing that people go to, aside from like gender.
I think it is race is the first. Because I think when you are... class is definitely, I think, the biggest uniter of people, but I think when you perceive others, race is what is first, because gender is something that is of mostly a social context, and it's however you can choose to present it or hide it. There's some variation to that, like obviously if you're transitioning and you get like literal surgeries, there's a part of that where it's like you can't always choose how people view you in that context, because it's like people can sometimes perceive you however you want. But there is some level of control there in gender expression. And same with like cultural identity or like neurodivergence. Like there isn't like a way to look autistic. But with race, it's like you cannot take your skin off and all your lived experience off. That is going to stay with you, and people are going to interpret however they choose to, and that is out of your hands completely. And so I do think that is why it is so much more of a barrier in autistic and like queer, but like intersectional, but a lot of neurodivergent spaces, because a lot of talking and advocacy being done is not intentionally, but it's like because it's mostly done by white people, it's directed at other white people. Because it's just not, I don't think it's an inherently like thought of, like it doesn't click that you have to account for how this would vary for different people who don't have your like very white lived experience. And how there is a level of distrust in Indigenous communities when it comes to like governmental and like healthcare. Where it's, you can like still try and provide or market to those communities, but that doesn't mean you will be trusted. Because they've been taken advantage of like historically so much that it's like, and the way you're entering in those communities might not be with a perspective that actually represents them. An Indigenous space is going to be so much more welcome into actually bridging any gap in those communities than a white person trying to involve themselves where they might not be wanted, or they might not want you to speak for them.
Exactly.
You don't got to be in every conversation, girl.
I know.
Not you. Just like
no.
Right? It's not like you don't need to be in every
an ambiguous third hypothetical person.
Well, like I am a white person. I think that's okay to acknowledge. I was just gonna say that like, yes, I'm autistic and I have ADHD and I'm like queer and trans and all that things, but I am still like aware of the fact that when I interact with strangers and things like that, the first thing they're going to know about me is that I'm black. And like that I present as a man. And I'm aware that there's a privilege and safety and security in that, and knowing that like people are going to treat me a certain way and I don't have to like worry about this additional thing. I think in autistic organizations, from like a healthcare perspective, there's also that distrust of like autistic organizations haven't always had autistic people's best interest at heart.
A lot of eugenics kind of.
And I think having that sort of doubled with the Aboriginal healthcare side of things just makes it even more complicated.
It's also just so much more inaccessible.
Like there's a lot of well-intentioned white people out there who are trying to advocate for neurodivergent perspectives and things, but that shouldn't take away from anyone else's experience. And I think when we're trying to advocate for things, we just have to keep in mind that my experience is my experience. It doesn't mean anything for anyone else. Maybe someone else relates, and maybe they don't. And I probably don't have the lived experience to make that decision for anyone else.
And I don't want to do oppression Olympics or whatever, right?
No.
But it is like, I think something like white neurodivergent people do is they understand that they have some form of oppression. And that is like ableism against them, or it might be like homophobia or transphobia or something of that is, there is actual genuine oppression to their identity in some way. So they understand that oppression and they think it allows them to speak on oppression in general without understanding the nuances and intersectionality of identity and oppression against identity, especially when it comes to systematically, which will always be like fundamentally on race.
And I think obviously white guilt is a huge driving factor in a lot of this stuff. I think when a lot of white people are like, a lot of people who are white don't necessarily identify with being white because it's not really seen as like a culture in of itself.
Yes.
It's just like the antithesis, like the default, and therefore it's kind of associated a lot of times with the degradation and putting down of other people, which a lot of people don't enjoy.
Yeah.
That's fair enough, and don't want to be associated with like whiteness as a concept. That's not something I identify with. There's nothing for me to connect to that other than just like a hatred of other people.
There's no such thing as a white culture.
No, and like there is like cultures who are sort of lumped into whiteness. Like you can be like Scottish or Italian or German or any of these things, but white is not the culture.
I also will say they are only white for when it's convenient to be white.
Yes.
Historically, they were still immigrants and they were still treated as minorities. Like Italian people, Irish people were still heavily oppressed and treated as minorities despite having white skin, because it's just whiteness is whatever we want to allow the in-group to be.
Yeah, for sure. Throw out modern secular whiteness. But
in my opinion, I'm not an academic.
No, I agree with you there. But yeah, I think then when white people like are a minority in some situations, they sort of take that as a way to like minimize their whiteness or ignore their whiteness.
Absolutely.
Like, well, this like overrules this, and I'm oppressed, so that means I can like relate to you guys, or like not be white in some way. Which is sort of, I don't know, it kind of ignores the problem. Actually facing it head on.
Moral of the story: white people don't have to be involved in at every table.
Yes,
they don't need to be. Sometimes it's better to listen on the sidelines.
I understand where the impulse to insert yourself into everything comes from, but I think sometimes it's better to just take a step back and let other people speak.
Something that I feel like is very common, but not all just neurodivergent people, whiteness in general, but definitely like I can see its presence in like neurodivergent white spaces because of the common trait to take things literally rather than seeing the implication, which is fine. I do that too. I think when you aren't aware of the systematic presence of racism and white superiority, it's hard for them to recognize how obviously when people say things like not all men or like all white people are racist, those are hyperbole to describe a mindset that is going to be present in like every white person or every man unless it's like actually deconstructed internally. It's not literally saying like every white person is racist, but it's like every white person is going to be entering with a white view. And it's not going, and even though I think they don't really see racism unless it's like overt. Like if someone doesn't say the N-word literally or calls you a slur, they might not see something they're saying as racist. But when I hear certain politicians or talking points in shows discussing Indigenous people in a very paternalistic way, I can see it as very racist, but other people, especially white people, will not recognize that verbiage as racist the way I will.
I think that's down to education and lived experience, a combination of both. Because, a lot of white people are just ignorant to these things, not always through their own fault, but, just because something isn't your fault doesn't mean it's not your responsibility to change that. Sorry,
I don't want to comment you, but I have a very particular view on that. I don't think having sort of unconscious racist sort of like, or at least not like fully realized and deconstructed views about the world when you are white is inherently a moral failing of yourself. I think it's when you are confronted with it and people telling you like, hey, that's maybe your viewpoint's a little racist, or you aren't purposely like trying to center white people, but your perspective might be. And if you are confronted with that and it makes you uncomfortable and you don't decide to actually deconstruct it in any way or grow, you just like get defensive, then that's when that becomes an active form of racism, because you're choosing to not change. You've been confronted with that unconscious thing that you do. And instead of trying to change or realize it, you're like, no, I am going to have a willing ignorance to that behavior, and just because it doesn't impact me in any like social or financial way, like it doesn't hurt me, I don't need to change.
It's easy to feel that discomfort and go, well, it doesn't impact me directly, so I'm going to run.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people go like, I'm also autistic, so I can't be.
Yeah. But that doesn't help anyone, and like the autistic community is for all autistic people, to bring it back to intersectionality.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that includes Aboriginal people, that includes African people, that includes Asian people, that includes queer people, that includes women, and
other boys and sister girls.
Brothers and sister girls.
And the harder, but I think much more rewarding thing to do is to sit in that discomfort and listen to people and go, well, what can I do to help this situation or educate myself? I think when you've experienced like these sorts of intersectionalities from your own life, I think it's very easy to see that, well, like class and race and gender and disability and all these things like play into one another, and like they, even if it's not directly hurting this person, it kind of feeds back into that anyway.
Trickle down economics, am I right?
Trickle down,
something like that, so I don't know, is it hard like talking to other people about your autistic identity, not knowing what their perspectives are on these things?
I think when it comes to the familial norms,
yes,
an Indigenous family is going to have a different dynamic inherently.
Yeah.
There is a lot more like low socioeconomic stuff involved, and things that I think would be like really dramatic to white people is like something you have to confront and just learn how to grow and deal with when it's like when you're Indigenous, like having like again low socioeconomic access to a lot of things.
Yes.
I think generational trauma is a big one. And this is not just Indigenous, this is a lot of migrant and non-white communities. I think the way generational trauma can interact with autism is like very intense. It can exacerbate it a lot too. And I'm not saying Aboriginal people are a monolith, but there's definitely going to be colorism in other Black and brown communities.
Yes.
I'm not going to pretend like there wouldn't be Indigenous people who might not consider me Indigenous the same way they are, because it is a difficult experience and I am white passing. But it's like the only people I've encountered who said, you can't be Indigenous, you're white, has been white people. It's unironically been white people.
Yeah.
I've never met an Indigenous person who's done that.
No, never in my life. In fact, I've been recognized more as Indigenous by other Indigenous people.
Yes.
Other Indigenous people would be like,
shared trauma.
Like I think it's just a sixth sense that we seem to have where we can recognize ethnic features on each other and be like, oh, so
you're a brother boy.
Yeah, we're cousins now, actually.
Yeah, you're a black fella too.
So every single time and again, when you said, that one time when you felt like you had to need to justify yourself to your friends, I was like, which time? I've been surrounded, especially in high school, when you're growing up and you're developing and you're learning. And again, me being on the spectrum might have fully exacerbated these emotions and these sensations that I was feeling of like this otherness. But being surrounded by a predominantly white friend group who seemed to deny every sort of like connection to your culture that you had.
Yes.
And so many times where I got like rightfully mad at them for like just constant microaggressions, constant like racism, and was like, hey, this isn't good. That's all of a sudden when I was Aboriginal to them. Because I was angry. And I was mad and I was unreasonable in that moment.
Yes.
Yeah. She's sleeping, I think.
What a cute baby.
Thoughts, Rosie?
So, we've talked a lot about a lot of different things here.
We have.
Really interesting things. I think we may be just running a little bit short on time.
Yes.
So, closing thoughts.
Yes.
Do you have anything you'd like to say to the autistic community as Aboriginal autistic people? Maybe anything that you think white autistic people should hear?
Yeah, I'm going to be kind and loving when I say this, especially with a lot of white autistic folks. I know a lot of them are activists, stuff like that. Keep fighting the good fight. Always be aware of minorities' voices.
Yes. Reach out to them.
Reach out to minorities.
Don't make them do the labor of teaching you.
Exactly. And
you have to meet them
all
with
my
them.
Sister girls and brother boys, again, keep fighting the good fight. Get that diagnosis if you need to get it. Keep persevering. I know sometimes it feels like the world is sought out to fully be against us. You've got it. You've got community. You've got family. just know you are loved.
Yeah.
Rock on.
Can I have a closing thought?
Absolutely.
Yes. I think when it comes to intersectional identity, it's really hard to figure out, and it's something I only figured out much older, that's like, oh, all these parts of myself are allowed to coexist as one. They don't have to be separated.
Yes.
Like, me being Indigenous isn't something I have to push away to be queer or like an adult in this like very ableist system. They're all allowed to coexist, and I think it's just reassuring Indigenous and queer people and like neurodivergent people. There is allowed to be nuances to who you are. You don't have to conform to what I think a lot of the time neurotypical people expect you to be to their convenience, like wholesome or cool. You have to be like cool and nice. Like, no, you're allowed to be messy and not correct all the time and just be yourself. You're allowed to have more like human mistakes and failures, and that's okay. You don't have to be the perfect model minority.
You are your own person, and it's okay to be you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Treat yourself with love.
Treat yourself with love. Thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing all these wonderful points. We've covered so many beautiful things.
I never looked at the camera once.
That is okay. You can look at it now.
No.
We're going to say closing thoughts. What were our closing thoughts that we decided on?
Hugs and kisses.
And
Kisses and
smooches
hugs.
even.
And a fist bump if you prefer that.
Yes.
Or don't touch me.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch me.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been Miah, Kaiya, and myself, Riley, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.